Now, this graph question was very badly done that year because a lot of students did very strange things. You may have seen me mention this graph question before in class. First things first, what must you recognize about this graph? What kind of graph is this? This is not your normal cubic or your normal quadratic graph, right? It is a reciprocal graph. It is a reciprocal graph. What do we know about reciprocal? There are two kinds of reciprocal graphs that you are supposed to know. What are the two types of reciprocal graphs that you need to know? There is this type, a over x, and there's the a over x squared. They are both reciprocal graphs, but obviously you can tell their general shape is different. Why? Because x squared is always positive. So since x squared is always positive, you will not have a negative value. And that's why the negative part of the graph, if you notice here, you flip it upwards, it becomes your x squared. A over x squared. Logical, right? Yeah, but these are all the general shapes that you are expected to know. Cambridge very long never test reciprocal graph already. Then some students forget the general shape of reciprocal graphs. Then you all will ask me this question: how come the general shape of your reciprocal graph is important, but it's plotting what? Plotting, even if you don't know the general shape, you just plot and then use your curve rule to draw, right? But in this specific case, it is important to know the constraints of your reciprocal graphs. So many students got the graph wrong this year in 2023 because they forgot what the general shape of a reciprocal graph is supposed to look like, including quite a few of my students. I think among my students that year, only one of them got this question, the entire graph correct. The rest all made the same mistake. Now, let's go ahead and find understanding that this is a reciprocal graph. But it's a reciprocal graph with x over x squared. So the general shape, we bear in mind, is supposed to look something like this. Right? And in this case, both your x-axis and your y-axis are technically asymptotes because you cannot have x equals to 0. Why cannot have x equals to 0? If x is equal to 0, then I divide by 0 and then I get a black hole. My 10 Gbps internet is working very, very well, as you can tell. Okay. What's the value of x when, or y when x is -3? So 2 over, there are always students who forget to put the bracket. You need to put the bracket because you square the negative sign as well. If you don't square the negative sign, then the negative sign remains, then your answer is going to be wrong. So the answer you should leave here is 9.8. Because all the answers, as you can see, are given to 1 decimal place. So now I can go and start plotting and drawing my graph. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to copy this graph over. So when x is -3, y is -9.8. Notice that the intervals for your x and y axis are different. So you all better be very, very careful. So -9.8 should be here because 5 small squares is 1. That means 1 square is 0.2. Okay, so -3, -9.8 should be here. Let me use red because it's more striking. Then -2, -6.5. -6.5 will be somewhere in the middle. If you need to, you can always label where your 7 is going to be so that it's easier for you to plot. So you know that it will be exactly in the middle over here. Okay. Then we have -1, -2. Then we have -0.5 is 5.5. And some more is 0.5. Sorry, it's not 0.5, it's -0.5. So 5.5 will be in between. Then 0.5 is 8.5. This is 9. So 8.5 will be in between. 1 is 4. 1.5 is 4.4. 2 is 5.5. 3 is 8.2. And this is why I say knowing your general shape in this case is kind of important. Okay, I already finished plotting the graph. You just need to wait for the thing to load. If you look at the points, you realize the points look kind of insane, don't they? How in the world do you plot this graph? What you must remember about your reciprocal graph is that there are how many parts to a reciprocal graph? There are 2 distinct parts to a reciprocal graph. So the first distinct part that you should have joined together would have been like this. Okay, I'm drawing on the iPad, therefore it will never be accurate. In fact, never be accurate, it might be a gross understatement. What does the second part of the graph look like? What is the mistake that many students made that year? They went to do this. Can you tell me what is wrong with this? Elijah, what is wrong if I do this? The red color part.
Because it's supposed to be in asymptote.
Your y-axis is your asymptote because x can never be equal to 0. Because when x equals to 0, you know in your reciprocal graph that it gives you an undefined value. Okay, and that is why you need to know your general shape because your reciprocal graph is 2 distinct parts. So this graph shows you 2 distinct parts. Why you go and join the 2 distinct parts together? That is because you don't know the general shape of your graph. You need to know that any reciprocal graph should have 2 distinct shapes, 2 distinct parts of the graph. And so you are just supposed to connect the left-hand side and the right-hand side. You are not supposed to connect the left with the right. And it can never pass through here for the simple reason that your x can never be 0. What? The y-axis is always an asymptote in the reciprocal graph. Okay? So many students that year lost at least 1 mark because they go and join the two graphs together. But if you understood how a reciprocal graph general shape should look like, this gives you the general shape of your reciprocal graph. This is like that. This is like that. What? Don't forget to label the equation. So this is y equals to 2 over x squared plus 3x minus 1. Okay? Now, once you are done with the graph, look at the next part of the question. See part 1. On the same grid, draw the graph of 2y minus 5x equals to 7. Anytime they ask you to draw a straight line graph, I will always transform the straight line equation into y equals to mx plus c. So 2y equals to 5x plus 7. And therefore y equals to 5 over 2x minus, how did I get minus, plus 7 over 2. From here, what you should have to plot and draw the graph is a table of values. That's why the question is a 2-mark question. Your table of values here actually carries 1 mark. If I wanted you to draw the graph without a table of value, I would given the question as a 1-mark question. So it's a 2-mark question because you are supposed to give me the table of values. So you use convenient values like -3, 0, and +3. But there's a case here not to use -3 and +3, right? There's a case here because your denominator is out of 2, right? You may want to consider using -2 and 2 instead, so that it gives you better numbers to work with. Okay, regardless. So 5 times 5 out of 2 times -2 plus 7 out of 2 will give me -1.5. Yeah, so actually -2 doesn't give me a nicer number. -3 gives me a nicer number in this case. Oops. So we should perhaps just use -3. And it will give me -4. So this will just be +3. So this will give me 11. And then when it's 0, it's just 7, so 3.5. So once I have the table of values, I can then go and plot my graph. So when x is -3, y is -4. When x is 0, y is 3.5. 3 is here, so 3.5 is here. And then when x is 3, y is 11. Connect them using a straight line. You will know, obviously, that you have drawn the correct straight line when all the points can connect. Okay. Then don't forget to label the equation. So this is y equals to, no. Label the original equation. So it's 2y minus 5x equals to 7. That's the original equation. You should always label back the original equation, not the modified equation. Okay? Then the question asks you to read off the x coordinates of the points where the line intersects the curve. My values will not be very accurate because I'm freehanding it too much. But roughly, this is just a very, very rough estimate. So the two values that I will have if I read off my graph is negative 0.5, negative 0.6. This is negative 0.65. And then this is 0.5, 0.6, 0.7. This is positive 0.75. Can y'all check the answer key and tell me what does the answer key say is the computer value? What is the computer value? LOL. I am so near. I'm amazingly near. Okay, please go and draw the graph properly and read off the value. My value is too far off. I'm going to erase it. Far is an understatement. Okay, but go and read off the values from your own graph. I'll delete the value so that I don't confuse you. But the computer value is negative 0.40 and 0.60. So what is acceptable in this case is plus minus 0.2. But my value, okay plus minus 0.2 is not that far off My second value is acceptable. My first value is only 0.5 off. 0.05 off. Okay. You should always aim for plus minus 0.1. Okay, let's move on. Thankfully, we don't need the values from part 2 to go and find the value of these solutions. A lot of students got this question wrong that year also because I think it has to do with a general lack of practice when you all do certain types of functions and graphs questions. So you all are always very used to the function and graph questions where you make the y appear from the equation, right? That is not the correct solution to this question. So what many students did here is they try to make y appear. But making y appear is the wrong solution in this kind of question. Okay, what do I need to do for this question? The key phrase here being what do I need to do? So many students here will sub in the value of x. And then you sub in the value of x here, you will find you will form two equations, right? And then you equate them. I'm actually not inclined to accept that particular method. I will repeat this. For a graph question like this, I am not inclined to accept this particular method. Why? Because part 3 wants you to find the answer by calculation, I'm pretty sure, and not by substituting the values. So the problem with doing substitution of values, right, you will never get a nice number, because it's very unlikely that your value of x in part 2 will exactly be correct. So this one, I will advise you to go and check with your school teachers. You go and check with your school teachers. To me, simultaneous, I don't know whether Cambridge will accept it. They will mention it in their examiner's report. But I don't intend for this question to be done by simultaneous. You should go and check with your school teacher whether simultaneous substituting in the values of x from part 2, whether that is an acceptable solution. If they say yes, then okay lah. But that's not how I want the question to be solved either. And I don't think that's how Cambridge wanted you to solve the question either. So how? If we don't do substitution using the values of x, how then do I find the value of a and b? It is by transforming your equation. But the problem with this is that many students transform the wrong equation. Like I said, we don't want to make x appear. Remember that when two graphs intersect, what do we know about the equation of two graphs? We know that the equation of two graphs are equal. Which means that at the points of intersection, y equals to 5 over 2x plus 7 over 2, and y over equal to, what's my original equation? 2 over x squared plus 3x minus 1. Can be equated. Okay, like actually I shouldn't write this. I should write the original equation. Then you'll tell me, Cher, isn't this doing simultaneous equation? Kind of, but not really, because I'm not substituting any values here. But if this is what you meant by it is simultaneous equation, then yes, this is the correct method by calculation. But not by subbing in the values of x that you found in the previous part. So if they can be equated, what does that mean? It means that because I already found what is y equals to mx plus c in the previous part, right? So I will have y equals to 5 over 2x plus 7 over 2, right? Which is also equal to 2 over x squared plus 3x minus 1. And therefore, when I simplify this, I will end up with 2 over x squared plus 3, then minus 5 over 2 is minus 2.5, right? So I have 1 over 2x minus 3.5, 4.5 equals to 0. How do I make this equation appear? This equation has x cubed, isn't it? If it's an x cubed, then obviously the logical thing here is to multiply by x squared. And therefore you will get 2 plus. Actually, I won't even multiply by x squared. I will directly multiply, get rid of the denominator also. So I will multiply by 2x squared. If I multiply by 2x squared, I will have 4 plus x cubed minus 4.5 times 2 is 9. X squared equals to 0. And therefore x cubed minus 9x squared plus 4 equals to 0. comparing coefficients against what? You have x cubed minus ax squared plus b equals to 0. That is what they gave you, right? Therefore, a equals to 9. Sorry, it's not minus, it's plus. So a equals to -9. B equals to 4. So this is also by manipulation of equation that we have seen before. All right, the alternative is the same logic, except that I equate them. I will now have 2 over x squared plus x over 2 minus, this is 9 over 4, or 9 over 2, equals to 0, right? So I look at the equation that I'm comparing against, right? What do I need to do? My x cubed plus ax squared plus b equals to 0. I divide this by x squared so that I get x plus a plus b over x squared equals to 0. So b over x squared plus x plus a equals to 0. Then obviously what I need to do here, I want to get rid of the denominator, right? I will times 2 here. So I will get 4 over x squared plus x minus 9 equals to 0. So again, same idea, comparing coefficients. A equals to -9, B equals to 4. Same application, same idea, different application. We do it in a slightly different way. Okay. For this question, I will ask you to go and check with your school teachers. So please go, when you either text them or when school reopens, go and check with them. If I sub in the values of x as found in part 2, are they acceptable? I'm not convinced that you can do that. And then the other question I will have as an extension, if they say that yes, you can do that, then what if my values of part 2 are not accurate? Because obviously you won't get the computer value -0.4 and positive 0.6. That is a computer value. Right? So what if I sub in like x equals to -4.5 and x equals to -6.5, for example? Then the answer will be different one. Right? And that's the reason I believe that it is unlikely to be a case that you are allowed to do it by substitution of your values from the previous part. I'm very sure that, I'm 90% sure that you need to use equation form to go and solve. Otherwise, you sub in the values, your values of x is not accurate in the curve, doesn't make sense to me. Then your values of a and b will not be accurate. Okay, but you can go and check with your school teacher.